Well, of course, we lost a cottage in 41 in the fire. It's completely flattened, burned just like that. And I happened to stand with my parents in 1941, probably about 10 years old, over on Webster Street and watched the cottage burn. And as the fire moved, and standing there, you could see the ocean. You could see Brant Rock. You could see Ocean Bluff. And you could see the fire moving along. And every once in a while, there'd be this huge explosion, and it would be another cottage that was just going up like that. And of course, the community at that particular time was devastated by the loss of property, but there was no loss of life, and which was probably, it's very good that it happened in September and not in August, because you probably would have had loss of life that would have been tremendous. And at that particular time, what they did of the town of Marshfield after the fire was to bring to town meeting all sorts of rules and regulations on outdoor fires and all sorts of things. Actually, we lost the property we gave it to the town really for rezoning because it needed to be rezoned, which they did. They increased certain property rules and regulations that the town fathers felt were important. And another little thing I'd like to mention, our friend Joan Scarpinetti, who is really a great person, um, she loved history, the history of Marshfield. She was a summer resident, and she was leaving with her parents. And as she got in the car, down to Fieldston, and turned the corner where Ocean Street turns, Joni said the car ahead of her, she saw them throw a cigarette out, and of the car, a lighted cigarette. And as certain kids would perhaps look for somebody that was smoking, that impressed her. So when she got home, one of the things they felt started the fire was a lighted cigarette from a car. So Joni claimed to always see the beginning of the Ocean Bluff fire, but it was stopped. The wind died down just about, I think, around 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And when the wind died down, the fire went flat down and stopped right. I've forgotten the street. It stopped.
Samoset Street.
Samoset Street. It stopped right there. Otherwise, if the wind hadn't stopped, it would have gone all the way to Cut River and the old Green Harbor River, I'm sure, because there was nothing to stop it except the wet marsh that was out there. Because we were actually probably notified by my grandfather, who was living in Marshfield at that particular time. He always lived in Marshfield, and I'm sure this was our second loss. We lost the first house, which was my grandmother's house that she inherited from her relatives, which is a very large Victorian house. That was located at Fieldston, and that was lost during the blizzard of 1898. And that house was a great loss to the family because it was such a large house. It was right on the waterfront in Fieldston, and that ended up in Green Harbor. The house was swept away, crumbled on its way across the marsh, and ended up in Green Harbor. So it was our second loss. The second cottage was something my grandfather had built for my grandmother because she had hay fever, did not want to live in North Marshfield in the summer. So she took her younger son and moved to Ocean Bluff. Actually, the Ocean Bluff fire should be the name of the fire, not the Brant Rock fire, because it didn't involve Brant Rock other than it was in the same vicinity. But should have always be called the Ocean Bluff. But of course, the newspapers in those days, Brant Rock was a big summer colony. It was the one that people from Abington, Whitman, Brockton, Rockland, all went to in the summer for vacations and owned property there. It was common for people living in the outlying towns to own a cottage at Ocean Bluff and Brant Rock. It was just a very teeming place. There were hotels there. I think that probably there were at least 3 or 4 major hotels and plenty of rooming houses there. So it was a very wonderful place. They have wonderful concerts, band concerts, all the time at Brant Rock. And there was a bowling alley. There was a movie theater. It was a great place. Not much of a beach because the beach would change with the seasons coming and going. The rocks would come in, the rocks would go out one year, the next year. But it wasn't much of a beach, but people loved it because it was cool in the summer, and they'd go down just Sunday school picnics from churches. There was a great love of going down there with your Sunday school class and celebrating just summer in Brant Rock. Just one afternoon was all that many people got to go to the beach.
Well, I watched the Brant Rock fire from the top of Wrexham Hill, and you could see the sheet of flame that was gobbling up the houses as the fire tore southerly along the beach area. It was very impressive because the fire traveled fairly fast. There was a high wind that day, and the sheets of flame would jump from house to house, and then they'd come to a street, and it would be a whole mass of flames as it jumped the street and carried on down the beach there until it got to Samoset Beach, the Samoset Road, when the wind amazingly changed, and the firemen were able to put out the fire at that point. But by that time it had burned from Fieldston all the way down to Samoset Street. But in a fortunate way, if anything can be said to be fortunate about the fire, it was brought to a halt by the fact that the wind changed, and then it became history, and we've been talking about it ever since. And
I believe somewhere in the vicinity of 300 houses were burned.
something like that. I'd say around 300.
Yeah, but actually in our book, we do have the exact number of cottages that were burned. I believe it was around 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the afternoon when it completely died. As Cynthia said, the wind died down and saved Brant Rock. But I basically remember one instant when the casino broke into this huge mass of flames. There was, on top of the hill right there at Ocean Bluff, there was a huge casino, which a casino was a place of meeting, probably 2 or 3 stores in there. And they sold ice cream, they sold all kinds of things. And upstairs at the casino was a dance floor. My mom and dad used to dance practically hours on end in that casino. It was really a very, very sort of swish place for Brant Rock and Ocean Bluff.
I don't remember the casino part of it at all.
Yeah.
But then I was upwind of it all.
You probably had a very different view than I
Yes,
did. When
I
it,
did.
when it went, it was huge. It took up the whole parking lot where the Brant Rock, where the Ocean Bluff post office is today. That was the place that the casino stood on. I don't know whether the old pictures would show another name, but I doubt it. It was the casino at the Ocean Bluff. There wasn't one quite as large as that at Brant Rock, but there was a very large building there, which eventually housed the old movie theater at Brant Rock, which downstairs, I believe there was an ice cream place. It was almost next to Estes Candy Kitchen, which was probably the most famous candy kitchen anywhere around. They had the most wonderful popcorn, and Mr. Estes owned it, and he had this huge pot they cooked the popcorn in, which was copper. And I believe it still exists. There's somebody in Brant Rock that owns that wonderful copper pot. It's Sean. He kept it just in beautiful condition. And you walk into this store, and that's all you saw was this wonderful popcorn popper that big. You always came to the beach for popcorn.
Mm-hmm.
And they had these little bags of popcorn. There was one for 5 cents. There was one for 10 cents. I don't think there was a bigger bag, but he twisted the end of these little bags, and they were fascinating. You remember him doing it? He would take the bag and
Oh yeah, I remember
whirl it around. It was a brown paper bag, like we have big ones today, but these were 5 and 10 cent ones. Then he had wonderful popcorn bars, and they were long bars made out of the popcorn, about that long, and he had pink ones, which were what do you call
kind of peppermint.
it wasn't peppermint. They called them something else. The old name for something.
I know what you mean.
There was one that was chocolate. There was one that was white. There was one that was.
Those were the 3 colors.
Yeah.
The pink ones, the white ones.
It was just open in the summertime, and people came from all around to go to Estes Candy Kitchen. And he had this wonderful little bar of fudge that he made. I believe it was something like maybe 10 cents for a bar of fudge, but it was marvelous. And that's all he carried in there, plus the candy kisses. And he had every kind that you could think of. And he made them right there in the building. And the candy kisses were wrapped in appropriate molasses, of course, was made in sort of a yellow-brown container, was covered in a yellow and brown paper.
Each of the little coloring.
Oh, yes. And then there were pink ones and red ones and, all sorts of candy kisses.
I can remember when they twisted them. I mean, he'd pull it.
Yeah, he twisted those too.
It was fascinating for kids to watch the taffy being whipped around.
And the building stood right there, just next door to the fish market. And of course, most people know where the fish market is because it still stands today.
Because of Henry.
And Henry's Fish Market. Henry, who went to Amherst College and ended up selling fish in Brant Rock. I don't think Henry was a Marshfield person, but I'm not really aware of that. And Henry's still alive down there today. He's sort of a fixture in old Brant Rock. And Brant Rock became well known all over the place. It was the place the towns surrounding Marshfield went to in the summertime to enjoy a day at the beach. One of the big things you did if you went to Sunday school in any of the old churches around here was a Sunday school trip to Brant Rock in the summer if you were a child, because sometimes it was the only time a child got to go to the beach was when they went with their Sunday school class. So that was perhaps a little more important than religion at that time. But it was, and then eventually the movies came along. I believe they had talkies there in the beginning, didn't they?
Yeah.
And eventually it became the movie theater, which was upstairs in this huge building. And downstairs was the bowling alley. So as you sat there watching a love scene, all of a sudden you would hear the crash of the bowling alleys downstairs, right in the middle of it. I can remember that.
Yes. Oh, yes. I remember that very well.
But during the war, of course,
remember.
we were at the beach during the war. We had a blackout down there. And of course, the blackout was so severe that you didn't go out too much after dark. And that's where actually I celebrated the end of the war. I believe it was the European war that we got the message it was over. And I can remember great celebration in the streets down there. And there were several wonderful places to eat down there. One was Sandy's, up on the corner right across from the Brant Rock supermarket was a wonderful restaurant, Sandy's. I worked there when I was 16. And Joan Sleeper was another person who worked there. She was a Marshfield person also. And I think probably some of the Staples worked there. In fact, I know they did. But it was a place where young girls would work. And the Coast Guard station was in the empty lot right there across from the little chapel on the waterfront was the old Coast Guard station, which now has been removed. And of course, then we had the famous Brant Rock that stuck out into the water there. So there was no jetty across there at all. So the thing you did was go out on Brant Rock and then let the tide come in around, which it did. You had to swim in. So that was an exciting thing you did.
So, anyway, one of the things I wanted to mention about the fire was when it was all over and we did have a chance to go down and see what the ruins really were. And we were, as I said, I think, one of the first people to go in. But among other things that burned, which was most everything, one of the fire engines burned.
Oh,
Did
yes.
you see the fire engine?
Oh, yes.
And many of the photographers of that era were intrigued by the fact that the fire engine itself had burned. So we talked about that a lot. It was all over the news that the fire engine was gone.
Actually, we were let in the next day, not the day that you went, but my family went the next day.
Mm-hmm.
You can see how important that Marshfield Hills was.
Well, yes, of course.
And Marshfield Hills always was a little one step above North Marshfield. And actually, we were let in, and of course, all we had left were the old iron beds. And I can remember seeing the pots, bedroom pots that we kept under the bed because, of course, we had no bathrooms down there.
Bathroom facilities.
Yeah. And that was about all we had left. And so we had lost not only one house in the storm of 1898 at Fieldston, but we lost the second one in the fire. So my father said, at this point, he said, oh, no way are we going to build another house. So he said, I'll build you a trailer that we all can sleep in. So that's what my father did. And I spent my childhood actually at Blackman's Point in a trailer that my father had built, all because of the fires at Brant Rock and Ocean Bluff and Fieldston. Brant Rock had several big fires, but nothing compared to the fire of 41.